Welcome back, deep divers. Ready for another fascinating journey into the world of, well, the future.
Always ready to dive in.
Today, we're taking a look at AI,
Oh, this is a good one.
specifically how it thinks or,
Mhm.
how it processes information, makes decisions, the stuff that usually happens behind the scenes inside that black box.
Black box, yeah. Always a bit of a mystery, isn't it?
Exactly. But not today. We're going to crack it wide open thanks to some groundbreaking new research.
This is exciting stuff. Cutting edge, really.
And it's not just for tech whizzes either. AI is everywhere these days. It's influencing so much of our lives, whether we realize it or not.
Absolutely, from what you see online to, well, potentially even life or death situations in the future.
So understanding how these systems work, how they think, it's becoming more and more important for all of us.
Couldn't agree more.
Okay, so let's set the stage. We've got this black box problem, right? And we know AI takes in information, it spits out results, but how it gets from A to B has always been a bit murky.
Right. Like we can see the ingredients going into a cake and the delicious cake coming out of the oven, but the actual baking process, the transformation, that's hidden.
Perfect analogy. So how do we see inside the oven, so to speak?
Mhm.
How do we make the AI's thinking visible?
Well, researchers at Kyushu University have developed a really fascinating method called the ache distribution method. It's like shining a light into that black box.
K-Star.
Yeah, K-star. It's a bit technical, but we'll break it down.
Please do,
And
because
just-
I'm already intrigued. You're saying we can actually visualize how AI organizes information.
In a way, yes. Think of it like this. Imagine trying to understand a 3D object, a sculpture, let's say, by just looking at its shadow. You lose a lot of information, right? Depth, detail, the whole picture.
Right, it's just a flat representation of something much more complex.
Exactly. Older visualization methods for AI were kind of like that. They simplified things too much. This ache method, though, it lets us see that complexity, the nuances of how AI is processing information.
Okay, now I'm really curious. How does this K-Star thing actually work? How does it reveal what's going on inside the AI's brain?
Good question. So every piece of data that the AI processes gets assigned a K value. This value tells us how well the AI is distinguishing between different categories.
Categories like, cats and dogs.
Perfect example. Let's say we're training an AI to tell the difference between cats and dogs. A high K value for cat means the AI is seeing a clear separation between cats and, well, everything else, including dogs. It's got a good grasp on what makes a cat a cat.
Makes sense. So a high K means the AI is confident, it's got things neatly organized.
You got it. Now, a low K value might mean the AI is getting a bit confused. Maybe it's placing a dog too close to the cat category, like it's not quite sure what distinguishes them.
So a low K is like a red flag. It means there's some fuzziness in the AI's thinking.
Exactly. And by looking at the distribution of these A values, we get a much richer picture of how the AI is organizing information, how it's thinking, if you will.
This is fascinating. We're literally getting a glimpse into the mind of a machine.
We are. And what's even more interesting is that by using this method, researchers have discovered that AI tends to organize information, to think, in three distinct ways. Three different thinking styles, you might say.
Oh, this is where it gets juicy.
Yeah.
I'm all ears. Tell me about these AI thinking styles.
Well, let's start with the well-organized one. We call it the clustered style.
Clustered, okay.
In this style, similar items are grouped together, like all the images of cats would be in one cluster, all the dogs in another, nice and neat.
So it's like a well-organized library, everything in its right place.
Precisely. And when the AI's thinking is clustered like this, it generally means it's doing a good job at categorization, at understanding the differences between things.
So a clustered AI is a happy AI.
You could say that. It's definitely an AI that's less likely to make mistakes.
Okay, that's one style down, two to go. What's next?
Well, things get a little messier with the next one, which we call the fractured arrangement.
Fractured. Ooh, that doesn't sound good.
It can be problematic. Imagine if someone went into that well-organized library and just started randomly reshelving books. Chaos, right?
Holding chaos. Nothing would make sense anymore.
And that's what happens in a fractured AI. Similar items are scattered all over the place, making it harder for the AI to see the connections between things.
So a fractured AI might struggle to understand the relationships between different pieces of information.
Exactly. And that can lead to some pretty big errors, especially in situations where accuracy is critical.
Like, say, self-driving cars.
Exactly. Imagine a self-driving car with a fractured AI. It might not be able to properly distinguish a pedestrian from a street sign, and, well, you can see how that could be disastrous.
Yikes. Definitely don't want a fractured AI behind the wheel.
Okay.
That's clustered and fractured. What's the third style?
The third one is called overlapping, and this is where things get really messy.
Overlapping, huh? Even worse than fractured.
In a way, yes. This is when unrelated items get mixed together in the AI's representation. It's like finding a cookbook shelved in the philosophy section of our library.
That's confusing, to say the least.
It is. An overlapping arrangement means the AI is blurring the lines between different categories, increasing the chance of misclassification.
So a stop sign might look like a green light to an overlapping AI.
Potentially, yes. And that's obviously a problem, especially, again, in situations where those distinctions are crucial for safety.
Okay, so we've got our 3 AI thinking styles: clustered, fractured, and overlapping. And I'm guessing the goal is to aim for clustered and avoid the other 2 as much as possible.
You got it.
This is all so fascinating, but I have to admit, I'm still a bit fuzzy on how this actually helps us in the real world. Can you give me a specific example? Like, how does knowing about these thinking styles actually change how we design or use AI?
Absolutely. Let's stick with the self-driving car example. Imagine you're, a company developing self-driving car software. You're training your AI on tons of data, images of roads, pedestrians, signs, all that.
Right, making sure it can recognize everything it needs to navigate safely.
Exactly. Now, using this MEF method, you can actually analyze how your AI is organizing all that information. You can see if it's neatly clustered like we want it to be.
So you can check if the AI is really understanding the differences between, say, a tree and a pedestrian.
Precisely. And if you see areas where the K values are low, where things are looking fractured or overlapping, that's a sign that your AI might need some extra help. Maybe it needs more training data on pedestrians in different lighting conditions, or maybe its algorithms need some tweaking to better distinguish between certain types of objects.
It's like giving the AI a checkup, making sure its thinking is healthy.
A very good analogy. And this is just one example. This X method has applications in all sorts of fields where AI is being used, from healthcare to finance to, well, just about anything you can imagine.
So it's a tool for making AI safer, more reliable, more trustworthy. That's pretty powerful.
It is. And it all comes down to understanding how AI thinks, how it sees the world.
Which is exactly what we're doing here today. And, I have to say, I'm already feeling a lot less intimidated by AI. It's still complex, sure, but it's starting to feel a bit more, well, human in a way.
I think that's a great way to put it. AI is still a long way from being truly human, of course, but the more we understand its inner workings, the less mysterious and the less threatening it becomes.
Exactly. It's like we're starting to speak the same language. And who knows what kind of conversations we'll be able to have with AI in the future.
Now, that's an exciting thought.
It is. But for now, I think we need to take a quick break. We'll be back in a moment to delve deeper into the fascinating world of AI thinking styles and what they mean for the future of, well, everything.
Looking forward to it.
All right, deep divers, welcome back. We're picking up our exploration of AI thinking styles, those fascinating patterns that researchers have uncovered using this K-star method.
Right, we left off talking about those 3 main styles: clustered, fractured, and overlapping. And, as we were saying, it's really the clustered style that we want to see in a well-functioning AI.
Clustered being the well-organized one. Right.
Yeah.
Where similar items are grouped together, all nice and neat.
Exactly, like a well-sorted library, everything in its place. When the AI's thinking is clustered like this, it generally means it's making clear distinctions between categories. It's got a good grasp of the information it's processing.
So a clustered AI is basically a smart AI.
You could say that. It's definitely an AI that's less likely to make mistakes, to misinterpret information.
Which is, kind of important when we're talking about things like self-driving cars or medical diagnoses. We want our AI to be making the right calls, right?
Absolutely. Accuracy is key, especially in those high-stakes situations. And that's where those other 2 thinking styles, fractured and overlapping, can become a real problem.
Yeah, we talked about how a fractured AI is kind of like that chaotic library where the books have been randomly reshelved. Nothing makes sense. It's hard to find anything.
Right. And that lack of organization, that inability to see the connections between things, can lead to errors. The AI might misinterpret information, make a wrong connection, and that could have, well, some pretty serious consequences.
We definitely don't want a fractured AI making decisions about our health or our safety. So what about overlapping? That was the one where unrelated items get mixed together, right? Like
Yeah.
finding a cookbook in the philosophy section.
Exactly. And that kind of confusion, that blurring of boundaries between categories can be even more dangerous than a fractured AI.
How so?
Well, because with overlapping, the AI might not just be misinterpreting information, it might be actively creating false connections. It's hallucinating, seeing things that aren't really there.
Okay, that's a bit unsettling.
Yeah.
So an overlapping AI might not just make mistakes, it might make really strange, nonsensical mistakes.
It's possible. And again, in situations where accuracy is paramount, that kind of unpredictability is a major concern.
Right, so we've got these three thinking styles, and it's clear that clustered is the ideal. But how do we actually ensure that our AI is thinking in that clustered way? Is it just a matter of like giving it more data, more training?
It's definitely part of the equation. The more high-quality data we feed the AI, the better it becomes at recognizing patterns, making distinctions, and organizing information in that neat, clustered way.
So it's like education, the more the AI learns, the smarter it gets.
In a way, yes, but it's not just about quantity, it's also about quality. We need to make sure the AI is being exposed to a diverse range of data that accurately reflects the complexity of the real world.
Because, let's face it, the real world is messy. There are always exceptions to the rules, unexpected situations, things that don't fit neatly into categories.
Right. And that's where things get tricky, because AI, at its core, is still a machine. It relies on patterns, on rules, on algorithms. And when it encounters something that falls outside of those predefined parameters, that's when it can start to struggle.
So it's like the AI is trying to fit square pegs into round holes.
That's a good analogy. And that's why, even with all the advances we've made in AI, there's still this element of unpredictability. We can train AI on massive data sets, we can refine its algorithms, but we can never fully anticipate every possible scenario it might encounter in the real world.
Which is a bit unnerving, to be honest.
Yeah.
Especially as we become more reliant on AI in our daily lives.
I understand the concern, but here's the thing. This K-star method, this ability to visualize how AI is thinking, it's actually giving us a new tool to address that unpredictability.
How so?
Well, remember how we talked about those low K-star values being like red flags? They're
Yeah.
basically telling us where the AI might be struggling, where its thinking is getting fuzzy.
Right, so it's like we're identifying potential weak spots in the AI's understanding.
Exactly. And once we know where those weak spots are, we can take steps to address them. We can give the AI more training data in those specific areas. We can tweak its algorithms. We can essentially help it learn and adapt.
So it's not just about identifying problems. It's about finding solutions. It's about making AI more robust, more resilient, more capable of handling those curveballs that life throws its way.
Precisely. And this is one of the most exciting things about this research. It's not just giving us a glimpse into how AI thinks. It's giving us the tools to shape that thinking, to guide its development in a safer and more beneficial direction.
It's like we're not just passengers on this AI train anymore. We're actually getting into the driver's seat.
In a way, yes. And with that comes a lot of responsibility. We need to make sure we're steering this technology in the right direction, that we're using it to solve problems and create a better future for everyone.
Absolutely. But it's also, I think, a really exciting time to be alive. We're witnessing this incredible technological revolution, and we have the opportunity to shape it, to make sure it benefits humanity as a whole.
Couldn't agree more. It's a time of great potential, but also great responsibility.
And speaking of responsibility, one of the things we talked about earlier was this concern about AI bias. You know, the idea that AI might inherit or even amplify the biases that already exist in our society.
Right, that's a very real concern. And it's something that we need to be very mindful of as we develop and deploy these systems.
Because, I mean, think about it. If we're training AI on data that reflects our own biases, whether conscious or unconscious, then the AI is likely to replicate those biases in its decision-making.
Exactly. And that could lead to all sorts of unintended consequences, from perpetuating stereotypes to discriminating against certain groups of people.
So how do we address that? How do we make sure AI is fair and impartial, that it doesn't just reflect the worst aspects of ourselves?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? And there's no easy answer. But one thing that's becoming increasingly clear is that it's not enough to just focus on the technical aspects of AI development.
So it's not just about writing better algorithms, building faster processors, that kind of thing.
Right. We also need to be thinking about the ethical and social implications of AI. We need to be asking ourselves tough questions about how these systems will be used, who they will benefit, and who they might harm.
It's like we need to build ethics into the very fabric of AI.
I like that. It's not just about making AI smarter, it's about making it wiser. And that requires a much broader perspective, a perspective that includes not just engineers and computer scientists, but also ethicists, social scientists, philosophers, and frankly, everyone who will be affected by these technologies.
So it's a collective effort, a societal conversation that we need to be having.
Absolutely. And the sooner we start that conversation, the better, because the decisions we make today about AI will have a profound impact on the world of tomorrow.
Well said. And I think this K-star method, this ability to peer into the mind of AI, it's giving us a really powerful tool to have that conversation in a more informed and meaningful way.
I agree. It's a step towards greater transparency, greater understanding, and ultimately greater control over the future of this technology.
And that's a future I'm actually starting to feel a bit more optimistic about. If we can understand AI, if we can shape its development in a responsible and ethical way, then I think there's a real chance that it can be a force for good in the world.
I share your optimism. There are definitely challenges ahead, but with careful consideration and collaborative effort, I believe we can harness the power of AI to create a brighter future for everyone.
And you know, what's really exciting is that we're just at the beginning of this journey. Who knows what other amazing discoveries we'll make about AI in the years to come.
The possibilities are truly endless, and that's what makes this field so fascinating. We're constantly pushing the boundaries of what's possible, exploring new frontiers of knowledge and understanding.
And I, for one, can't wait to see where this journey takes us next. But for now, I think it's time for us to wrap up this deep dive. We've covered a lot of ground today, from the inner workings of AI to its real-world implications and the exciting and sometimes challenging possibilities that lie ahead.
It's been a pleasure exploring this topic with you, and a huge thank you to all our listeners for joining us on this journey into the world of AI.
Remember, the future of AI is something we create together. So stay curious, keep asking questions, and let's build a future where AI empowers us all. Until next time, deep divers.
It's really amazing to think that we can actually see, like visually see, how AI is organizing information. That's got to be a game changer for researchers and developers, right? Oh, absolutely. I mean, before this K-star method, we were kind of stumbling in the dark. We knew AI was doing amazing things, but we didn't always understand why or how.
Right, it was all happening inside that black box.
Exactly. But now we can actually peek inside, see those patterns, those clusters, those, sometimes those not so organized areas. And that gives us a much better understanding of where the AI might be excelling, where it might be struggling, and how we can improve it.
And that's really the key, right? It's not just about understanding AI for the sake of understanding. It's about using that knowledge to make AI better, to make it safer, more reliable, more, human-centered.
Couldn't agree more. And I think that's where this whole conversation about AI ethics comes in.
Right, right. Because as amazing as AI is, as much potential as it has, we got to make sure we're using it for good, not for the opposite.
Exactly. And that means thinking carefully about the data we feed it, the algorithms we design, the applications we develop. We need to be mindful of the potential biases, the unintended consequences, the ways in which AI could be misused.
A big responsibility. I mean, we're basically shaping the future here.
We are. And it's not a responsibility we should take lightly. We need to involve ethicists, social scientists, policymakers, the public, everyone really in this conversation. Because the decisions we make about AI today will have ripple effects for generations to come.
Absolutely. This isn't just a tech issue, it's a human issue. And that brings me back to something you said earlier about how this K-star method is actually helping to make AI feel a little less, alien.
Right. Because when we can see how AI is thinking, even if it's not thinking in exactly the same way we do, it starts to feel a little less like this mysterious, unknowable force. It becomes something we can understand, something we can work with, something we can hopefully shape for the better.
It's like we're building a bridge between the human mind and the artificial mind.
I like that analogy. And who knows, maybe by understanding AI better, we'll actually learn something new about ourselves, about the nature of intelligence itself.
That's a pretty mind-blowing thought.
It is. And it just goes to show that we're really just scratching the surface of what's possible with AI. Who knows what incredible discoveries lie ahead?
Well, on that note of boundless possibility, I think it's time for us to wrap up this deep dive. It's been an incredible journey, exploring the inner workings of AI, the challenges, the opportunities, and the ethical questions that come with this powerful technology.
It's been a pleasure, as always.
And to all our listeners out there, a huge thank you for joining us on this exploration.
Remember, the future of AI is something we create together, so stay curious, keep asking questions, and let's make sure that future is one we can all be proud of. Until next time, deep divers.